But your Prime Minister has said that a ceasefire is unworkable, impractical.
At this stage, yes, because it's clear that the Hamas rockets continue to rain down on Israeli cities. Today, we had more than 30 rockets coming into Israel, reaching deep into Israel, cities like Beersheba, cities like Ashdod. It's clear that the whole purpose of our operation is to protect the civilian population of Israel from these incoming rockets.
I'd like to ask you about one specific allegation. There have been various allegations made by aid agencies about the conduct of Israeli forces inside Gaza, but the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs have been talking about an incident last weekend in which they say that Palestinian civilians who were told to shelter by Israeli troops, told to shelter in a house, were then shelled and 30 of them killed. What information do you have about that?
We're looking into it because we take such allegations very seriously, so we're investigating. At the moment, we don't have information of any such incident, and I can tell you on the day and in the area which the report points to, we didn't have the forces there in the area that they sort of allude to. OCHA also talks about the fact, and they said openly, that their report is based not on their own sources but on secondary sources. And I think one has to be sometimes careful, though we do take these charges very seriously and we will thoroughly investigate them. When one talks about secondary sources, we all know, journalists and diplomats, everyone knows that Hamas has an interest in playing up atrocity-type propaganda for their own purposes. We will investigate and we'll get to the bottom of it.
Can I just also ask you about your 3-hour daily pauses, lulls in your military operations to allow humanitarian aid, as you've said, to be distributed inside Gaza? But I mean, today we were here throughout that suspension of operations, and yet there was almost constant fire by your forces, both from the air and artillery on the ground. Is it true that you're not observing your own unilateral ceasefire?
No, we want to, and you'll notice that the United Nations in their resolution actually praised the Israeli policy of having these humanitarian corridors. What we are very concerned about is that Hamas has been utilizing these periods of quiet, and I think today was the 4th already, to rearm, regroup, and even attack Israelis. And so obviously we want to help the civilian people of Gaza. We want to help the humanitarian organizations deliver aid to the people of Gaza. We don't want to help Hamas. And so if we see during a period of what we call the humanitarian window, if we see people coming out of a bunker and putting up a rocket and trying to shoot it into Israel, of course, we will act.
Well, that was Mark Regev, the Israeli government spokesman. Let's get a Palestinian perspective on the crisis now, day 14 of this Israeli military operation codename Cast Lead. And we can speak to Hassan Khatib, who is in Ramallah in the West Bank, and he's a former minister in the Palestinian Authority. Thank you very much indeed for your time today, sir. Could I ask you, first of all, do you think that Hamas have made a right decision in rejecting this UN Security Council call for a ceasefire?
No, I think that they made the wrong decision, and I think that the two sides should have agreed on this ceasefire. Although the ceasefire neither fulfills the requirements and needs of Hamas, which includes the necessity to end the Israeli presence, military presence in Gaza, and to allow the movement in and outside Gaza, neither it solves the problems and requirements of Israel. So we all, frankly speaking, expected more thorough and more detailed and more comprehensive resolution from the United Nations that would deal and address with the different but basic aspects of this conflict. So while I do not approve the rejection of this resolution, I think that the resolution could have been more comprehensive and addressed the different aspects of the conflict.
What do you see as the way out of this? I mean, we have this Franco-Egyptian peace plan on the table, but it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. What is your thoughts about what is going to happen next? How much longer is this conflict going to go on for?
First, I think that the Egyptian initiative is working. Not that it is accepted by anybody, but simply it succeeded in starting negotiations between Hamas and Israel. 2 days ago, and on the basis of this initiative, Egypt had in Cairo, a Hamas delegation and an Israeli delegation, and Egypt conducted indirect negotiations between the two sides. Now the two delegations went back to their respective leaderships, and the Hamas delegation is coming back tomorrow, and the Israeli delegation is coming after tomorrow, in addition to the possibility of a higher level visit from Israel to Egypt. And this is all about negotiations indirectly on the basis of the Egyptian initiative. Now, I think that this track is positive, and most probably is going to allow Egypt to develop its initiative and to modify its initiative in a way that will be accepted by the two sides on the basis of the ongoing negotiations.
Okay, Hassan Khatib, a former minister in the Palestinian Authority, there speaking to us live from Ramallah in the West Bank. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, the United Nations and other aid agencies have been warning about the humanitarian situation inside Gaza after 2 weeks of fighting there, warning about the desperate shortage of supplies, food, clean water, medical supplies, and many more needs there. We can talk to an Oxfam representative, John Prideaux-Brun, who's in Jerusalem for us at the moment. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Can I ask you how you assess the level of humanitarian need inside Gaza at the moment?
Well, we consider it a full-blown humanitarian crisis within Gaza at the moment. We have 1 million people with no electricity. We're getting close to 1 million people with no water. We've got hospitals that are totally overwhelmed by the number of casualties and very short of stock. And we have virtually the whole population lacking food. So by any measure we have, this has to be classified as a humanitarian crisis.
Now, the Israeli military are allowing these 3-hour pauses in their military operations for aid to be distributed, they say, and they're allowing humanitarian aid convoys to come in. But is that enough in your view, this 3 hours a day?
In our view, it's totally and utterly inadequate. To do a food distribution, you've got to get the food from Karel Shalom up to Gaza City or wherever you're doing the distribution. You've got to sort the food into the various components that you're going to be distributing. You have to get the beneficiaries to the distribution point and get them safely home again, and then get your staff safely home again. In 3 hours, that's just simply not possible. We need a full, lasting ceasefire. That's the only way that we're going to actually make a big impact on the humanitarian situation.
Okay, John Prideaux-Brun from Oxfam, thank you very much indeed for that perspective from one of the leading aid agencies trying to get help to the 1.5 million people inside Gaza. Well, as we've been saying, both Hamas and the Israeli government have rejected that UN call for an immediate and durable ceasefire. All day today we've been watching pretty heavy fighting here, and the Israeli government now have to decide whether they're going to perhaps move into a third phase of their operations. There's been a lot of speculation in the Israeli media that after their initial air operation, then their ground offensive, there may be a third phase in which they pour thousands of army reservists who are on standby into built-up areas of Gaza to try to flush out Hamas militants. That, of course, would entail huge dangers for the Israeli military. That's the latest from here on the Israeli-Gaza border. Back now to you in London.
Ben Brown there on the Israel side of the Gaza border, and just as he was speaking within the last few moments, the UN Food Agency in Rome has said that 80% of those in Gaza now need food support. You'll find more detail on the conflict plus the history of the Gaza Strip on our website, a special in-depth section. That address on the screen, you can see it there, bbc.com/Gaza conflict, all one word.
Now, we are hearing serious allegations from senior people like the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner and also the International Committee for the Red Cross about the fact that perhaps Israeli troops might have contravened the Geneva Convention by, for instance, not ensuring that emergency assistance is getting to injured Palestinian civilians. The Human Rights Commissioner talked about 4 children found starving by the bodies of their dead mothers. I mean, what is your understanding of such situations? Do you think it's entirely possible that that kind of thing has been going on?
Well, certainly in the incident which the International Red Cross were talking about yesterday, we have our own independent eyewitness accounts of people who were in that house and who were there for 4 days without any help, with bodies under the rubble and children by their dead parents. So, I think absolutely this did happen. No one suggests this was deliberate, but the fact is it happened. Aid was not given, access was denied for 3 or 4 days to ambulances, to the International Red Cross, and these kind of things are clearly contrary to international humanitarian law. That's why we are appealing to Israel to do even more than they are doing now, to try to respect the civilian population, even if it's almost impossible. And that's why we need a ceasefire in Gazan circumstances, and to make sure that these incidents are not repeated, because they really are unacceptable.
Sir John Holmes, thank you very much indeed for joining us live from the UN.